Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It is Tuesday. Went this morning to get fingerprinted for the state, so I can get my general contractor's license. So that's a big deal. I'm super excited. So now after that, I stopped by the storage, pick up a dehumidifier and some air movers. We have an ongoing client, a repeat customer of ours. She's she owns multiple units, and in one of her units, there was a problem with a dishwasher, and then she wanted some old fence removed and disposed of. So my guy went out there yesterday to do the dishwasher, take the dishwasher out and install the new one. When he removed the old dishwasher, there was a hole in the subfloor. Everything was wet. There was it was a mess. So he said the cabinets are wet. The subfloor is saturated to a point that there's a hole in it. He said, "What do you want me to do right now?" And I said, "Well, clean everything up. Suck up as much of the water as you can for now, and build a little containment, in case there's mold there, and leave it at that. And I will go by there to do a water damage assessment tomorrow." So that's where I'm going now. Picked up the equipment. I grabbed my thermal imaging camera. I have my moisture meter. We're going over there now. I'm gonna take some moisture readings, do some moisture mapping, look around with the thermal imaging camera to see if anything else is wet that is, not noticeable, and see what the next step would be. So one thing with water damage is, if you ever discover a leak in your home, and for example the drywall's wet or your cabinets are wet, so it's important to differentiate if it's an active leak that's been going on for a while, or if it's a leak that just happened and you noticed it immediately. So when materials stay wet for longer than 72 hours, there's no more drying out. At this point, you got to just rip it out and install new. And really the right thing to do would be, if things are wet more than 72 hours, that means that there's some kind of microbial growth going on. So really, you should call a licensed mold remediation expert to come in, do their assessment. They should build a containment, run negative air pressure out of a window. Everything should be clean, contained. Your AC vents should be sealed so there's no cross-contamination throughout the rest of your home. And then they should remove all the affected material. Let the equipment run for 2 to 3 days after all the affected materials have been removed. Everything's been washed down with antimicrobial. And then 2 to 3 days later, they need to come in and remove the equipment, remove the containment, and then either the mold remediation contractor, if they're also a residential contractor or a GC, they can do the build back. If not, you need to hire another company to come in and do the build back. The good thing about Home and Beyond Services is that we are licensed mold remediators, and we're also licensed residential contractors, and we're about to be licensed general contractors. So there's nothing we can't do. There is nothing beyond our scope of work. So if you notice a leak on your ceiling, a little wet spot, a little water staining, give us a call. Let us come in. Let us take some moisture readings. We'll look around with the thermal imaging camera to see if there's any other problematic areas, affected materials, and hopefully we can just dry it out with some equipment, and if not, we're gonna have to cut out the affected area, and replace it. So the thing with this job today is I have to go in there and I have to figure out if this is something that we can dry out, or if we're gonna have to, or if it's past the dry out phase and we're just gonna have to rip it out and rebuild. So we'll see. I mean, hopefully I can just drop some equipment in there, let it run for a few days and dry all the affected materials out. I don't know, we'll see, because my guy said that the cabinets are a cheap particle board, so as soon as that stuff gets wet, it's over with, man. There's no drying that stuff out. That stuff will expand immediately. And yeah, so we're gonna see. Hopefully it won't be an expensive estimate for the client. Hopefully we can just dry it out. And if I see any signs of mold, so if you see any signs of mold, you can't, there's really no drying out, man. I mean, you can't blow air onto a surface with mold on it, because then you're just gonna disperse all those little microscopic mold spores throughout the entire residence. Just think about a dandelion, you know, when you blow on it, all the little pieces fly around. That's mold, you know. So if you have mold, you notice mold somewhere, you don't want air flow touching that, because the slightest bit of airflow will touch it, grab all those mold spores, and it'll just cross-contaminate your entire house. Those mold spores will settle on another surface, and they'll start colonizing on that surface. And before you know it, your whole house is covered in mold, you know? So yeah, it's really important. It's really important. If you have a water leak, make sure you look to see if you see any kind of discoloration. It could be greenish, it could be yellowish, it could be black, you know, any sign of mold growth. Do not put air on it. Do not put a fan on it trying to dry it out, because you're just going to make it worse. You need to call a licensed mold remediation expert. We'll come out, like I'm going out today, to do a water damage assessment or a mold assessment, and then we'll take the necessary precautions to protect the rest of your home, your home's health, and you and your family's health. All right, so I'm about to pull up here. I will give you guys an update when I'm done. As you can see, the subflooring is soft. It's definitely has some play to it. Definitely been affected by water. This is not safe. All right, this is client Linda. Took some moisture readings. The cabinet is wet right there. So the moisture mapping shows slight moisture here, all the way through the kitchen. The subflooring is wet. Just follow my finger. All the way up here, high moisture levels here. And we suspect that it's going behind the fridge. Cabinet bottom showed elevated moisture levels. This is all saturated. There's a hole in the floor under that linoleum. So subflooring is wet here, here, and just around that corner. I believe we can dry this out. That needs to be replaced. That needs to be replaced because it is soft here. You can see. But this linoleum is going to have to get removed all the way around the kitchen so we can access the subfloor and dry it. Then we're going to have to do new flooring in the kitchen. And this base cabinet could probably be dried out. We'll see what we can do in 3 days, if we can dry it out or not, and then we'll discuss other options. All right, so this is where I am placing all the equipment, placing DHU somewhere in the middle, running the drain line to the sink. I have to spread out where I plug them all in because this equipment draws a lot of power, and if I load up one circuit with all of them, it'll trip the breaker. So yeah, here I'm cutting out the linoleum under there to get some airflow under there, and placing a blower directly in that cavity. Yeah, I'm putting a blower on this side because there was some moisture levels on that cabinet. placing that other blower on the other end to blow to the other side of the cabinet. The whole idea here is, and that's the client. The whole idea here is placing the equipment in a way so that they all pull the dry, hot air from the dehumidifier and shoot it directly onto the affected material. So here, the subflooring caved in. So what I'm doing is I'm covering it with plastic to keep the outside air from coming inside. So we have to close up that crawl space cavity. We got to do it nice and tight so that the air movement isn't gonna break that plastic. And yeah, you know, we don't want rodents and insects coming inside the house, so we're doing that here, just covering that up. Oh, and then all the lines and all the cords have to be placed in a certain way so that, you know, it's not a trip hazard. Everything should be taped down nice and neat. You know, we want to protect the homeowner. We want to reduce liability. You know, we're taping all the cords down somewhat out of the way so nobody trips on them. Now, making sure everything is in order, grabbing some caution tape. Just an extra precaution, man. I'm putting caution tape on one entry to the kitchen, just so you know, hey, you know, it catches somebody's attention to be cautious. Putting caution tape down there. A little more caution tape on the dehu. Getting that carpet out of the way, taping down that line. Sure as everything is nice and neat. We don't have cords just running all over the place. Every equipment is placed in a spot where it needs to be for an optimal dry out. Beautiful. All right, guys. Just left the Linda job. Water damage assessment. We took some moisture readings, did some moisture mapping, figured out moisture mapping is pretty much like, for example, with a floor, you have the immediate affected area, let's say under the sink, just like this job. So now, how far did that water wick on that subflooring, right? So you just start from the immediate area, take your moisture readings, and then you just kind of go around, like you're going back and forth and out away from that area, taking readings to kind of map out what's affected, you know. And like the further you get away from that immediate area, the moisture readings are going to be less and less and less and less. So you can really tell which way the water went. You know what I'm saying? So we did that. The kitchen has linoleum flooring on it, and under that linoleum is wet. So that's going to be a problem because linoleum is basically a vapor shield. So it doesn't matter how many dehus I put in there. It doesn't matter how many air movers I put in there. The subflooring underneath that flooring is not going to dry out because it's wrapped, it's covered, it's sealed. You know, that moisture is just going to sit in there. So right now, I have to call the homeowner and let them know, hey, listen, we dropped equipment you know, we dropped the equipment in a way so like we're concentrating on drying out the cabinets. We're trying to salvage the lower cabinets for Linda. So that's what we're trying to dry out right now. But I'm also going to let her know, like, hey, listen, the subflooring's wet. It's not going to dry. You know, that subflooring is going to have to come up. The linoleum has to be ripped out. The only way that subflooring is going to dry is if we remove that linoleum and get direct airflow on that subflooring. Now, I can't just do that without authorization from Linda. So right now, the initial assessment, I just dropped some equipment in there to mitigate the damage for now. I'm going to call Linda after this video and let her know, like, hey, listen, we highly recommend we remove that flooring for a more effective dry out. You know, there's going to be an estimate for that. And then I'm going to have to shoot her an invoice for the equipment placement today, the water damage assessment, the thermal imaging, the moisture mapping, you know, so yeah, I mean, underneath that lower base cabinet, on the sink cabinets where the dishwasher was, there's a dip in the flooring and it's covered in linoleum. So I cut the linoleum out from under there. And as soon as I removed that, it was just MDF particle board. It was caved in, and I pushed it and my fingers went right through it into the crawl space underneath the trailer. So yeah, man, I mean, it's from my experience, from my professional experience, my suggestion would be remove that linoleum, and those cabinets are not salvageable, man. I mean, to do it the right way, you can't salvage those cabinets. It's MDF. They're already blown out, you know, and they're covered with like it's not, you know, those cabinets that come, they're like wrapped, what is it called? It's got this finish on it, but it's like a sheet, you know? That's another vapor barrier, you know? That's also gonna trap the moisture within that cabinet. So realistically, I'm gonna have to give her some bad news. I'm gonna say, listen, we gotta pull those lower cabinets out, and we gotta pull that linoleum off the kitchen floor, and hope that we can dry out that subflooring effectively. Worst case scenario, the subflooring dries out. We could do the repair under the cabinet on the subflooring, yeah, no problem. But she's gonna have to replace the lower cabinets. Now the problem with that is those lower cabinets go all the way across the kitchen, you know, and there's uppers and lowers. So it's an old trailer. You're never gonna find an exact match for those cabinets. You know, she's gonna have to get a whole new kitchen just because of the sink bottoms. Cabinets are done for, you know. So we'll see. I mean, it's at the end of the day, it's the client is the boss. The client decides exactly what she wants to do. We'll see which direction she wants to go, and we'll see. I'll keep you guys updated. I'll post another video. I'll probably edit a time lapse of me placing equipment on here. I'll put some pictures here or wherever. And yeah, please like, subscribe, and share. If you have any questions about water damage assessments or the dry out process or the equipment or anything like that, please feel free to comment below, guys. Thank you. Bye.